Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're going to explore something that's probably sitting in your closet right now. You might be completely unaware of its hidden depths. We are looking at the surprising sociology and psychology behind the modern board game renaissance. Seriously, if you think board games are just about rolling some dice and moving little plastic pieces around on cardboard, well, prepare to have your mind completely changed.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Our explainer today is grounded in some really fascinating insights from a book called Your Move, What Board Games Teach Us About Life by Joan Moriarty and Jonathan Kay. This text reveals how tabletop gaming is, so much more than just mere entertainment. It actually acts like a mirror, reflecting our human condition, our societal values, and even the hidden inner workings of our own minds.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the board game renaissance, then we'll enter the magic circle, compare destroyers versus builders, examine the European game revolution, and finally look at the evolution of choice.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the board game renaissance, why cardboard is booming.
In an era where we're literally carrying miniature video arcades around in our pockets all day, an explosion of analog gaming seems kind of improbable, right? Yet between the spring of 2016 and 2017 alone, US board game sales grew by an absolutely incredible 28%. And the really crucial takeaway here? The target audience driving this massive multi-million-dollar surge isn't kids. It is decisively shifted to adults who are desperately seeking face-to-face connection.
To truly put the scale of this into perspective, just think about this number. More than 60,000 people attended Gen Con, which is North America's largest hobby gaming convention, in recent years. Just for context, back in the 70s and 80s, attendance hovered right around 10,000. So this proves we aren't just looking at a passing fad. This is a massive, momentum-gathering cultural shift toward tabletop gaming. Moving right along to Section 2, entering the magic circle, a safe place to fail.
Now, getting into this hobby isn't always easy for everyone, and it's largely due to a deep-seated fear of failure. But to combat this, games offer a psychological sanctuary known as the magic circle. It's like a protected bubble. When you sit down to play, you stepped into this world where the normal rules of real life are completely suspended. Inside the circle, failing isn't a sign of incompetence, it is actually required to have fun. Honestly, if you're an absolute perfectionist, there's just no room for play here.
This contrast really shows exactly why that separation is so necessary. In the real world, those motivational posters always tell us to dare to fail, but our actual day-to-day lives teach us the exact opposite. Real-world failure means lost jobs, failing grades, or viral humiliation on the internet. We are trained to stay in our lane. But in the game world, take a party game like Telestrations, which is kind of like a mix of Pictionary and the broken telephone game. Failure there results in endearing incompetence, joyous panic, and gentle schadenfreude. Desperate incompetence inside the game is just hilarious. It's totally safe.
Which brings us to this beautiful quote, an essential theme of the source text. Laughter destroys fear. For a game to truly work, players have to try their absolute sincere best to succeed, and then, fail hilariously. This playful failure inside the magic circle breaks down our societal anxieties, and it becomes absolutely essential for genuine human connection.
And that brings us to Section 3. Destroyers versus builders, shifting social dynamics.
So how do the actual rules of the games we play reflect our broader social dynamics? Well, older American-style games, which are often affectionately or sometimes derisively called Ameritrash, are heavily focused on simulated warfare and direct zero-sum conflict. Think of Monopoly or Risk. It's simple. I bankrupt you or you bankrupt me. It often ends in bitterness and early player elimination, where you get knocked out and basically have to go watch TV while your friends keep playing without you. But Eurogames completely flip the script. They focus on building things, like communities, farms, or rail networks. The competition is a lot more passive-aggressive, and absolutely crucial to their design, the scoring happens at the very end, meaning no one gets eliminated early. The whole shebang is designed so everyone stays at the table until the game is over.
Let's look at how that happened in Section 4, the European game revolution, post-war pacifism in play.
So why exactly did this massive shift in game design happen? Well, it actually traces all the way back to World War II. After the devastating events of the war, German designers who grew up in the shadow of the Third Reich had exactly zero interest in games about military conquest. Therefore, Eurogames like Catan or Power Grid introduced these signature features: a focus on building rather than destroying,
randomized board layouts, flexible scoring systems, and rustic themes using wooden pieces instead of, say, plastic tanks. Also, as we mentioned, no early player elimination. They cater to what modern adults actually want after a long day, to unwind, compete gently, and most importantly, remain friends at the end of the night.
The crucial point here is how this mindset transformed the entire industry. Take this quote from acclaimed game designer Phil Eklund. He realized that his early designs, which were heavily focused on humans fighting other races in space, were conceptually dated and militaristic. As he notes in the text, he realized it was more or less a racist concept, and ultimately just not that interesting. The industry evolved away from that kind of warfare toward highly sophisticated pacifistic themes. We're talking about games where you manage 15th century banks or play as ancient Greenland hunters.
Let's explore this deeper in our final section, Section 5, the evolution of choice, morality, and game mechanics.
It is honestly amazing how game mechanics mirror our cultural values. And we can trace this all the way back to a man named Milton Bradley. His real life was this incredible tragicomic timeline. In the early 19th century, his father is financially ruined by the exact same potato blight that caused the Irish famine. Young Milton works incredibly hard, starts a lithograph business, and hits it big in early 1860 with a portrait of a clean-shaven Abraham Lincoln. But then, a totally surprising historical fact. Honest Abe decides to grow a beard later that same year. Bradley's entire inventory becomes instantly worthless. Ruined once again by sheer chance, his belief in hard work remained completely unshaken. So, at the end of 1860, he channels those life experiences into creating the checkered game of life to teach the virtues of perseverance.
Now, earlier games, like Snakes and Ladders, were strictly deterministic, right? You roll the dice, you move your piece, you obey the outcome. But Bradley really wanted to impart a moral lesson, so he essentially posed a profound philosophical question through his game design. How could sin exist in a world without free will? Think about it. If you are just a victim of a random dice roll, how can you possibly be judged for your actions?
And here is the mechanical genius of how he solved it. First, he threw out the dice entirely, mainly because they were associated with sinful gambling dens. Instead, players spun a six-sided top called a teetotum. Second, the spin didn't dictate exactly where you landed, rather it gave you a movement allowance. And third, and here is the real revolution, you were actually given a choice. You could choose to move up, down, left, right, or diagonally. Bradley introduced the mechanic of choice because in his moral framework, free will was absolutely required to learn the virtues of life. It's a simple rule change, but it was deeply tied to the cultural values of the time.
From teaching 19th century morality to helping a post-war Europe rebuild its social fabric, all the way to giving modern adults a magic circle where it is finally safe to fail and laugh together, board games are profoundly human. They literally teach us who we are. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Whether you are afraid of failing or you're just looking to connect with the people around you in a world full of glowing screens, what will your next move be? Thank you so much for joining me today. I highly encourage you to step into the magic circle, embrace failure, and maybe try playing something new this week.